These are always awkward at times. Feel free to keep your camera on or off. It doesn't really, it's always nice to talk to people, but I accept that we live in a new world. I guess Louise and I were just talking about too many online meetings these days.
Yeah.
It'd be great if we were all sitting in the same room. Now, anyway, so I'll just get started. And thank you so much, Louise, for being here as well, from Photoworks. And I think what I really want to convey and what I want everyone to have access to is just as much information as possible about an opportunity that is exciting. Just for some background, EASE really does hopefully start the process of building better relationships between the arts and the sciences. I'll talk a little bit about the rationale for the project, but as a whole, it's testing this idea of entrepreneurship and injecting that into kind of what is perhaps maybe becoming a little bit, how do I say this, a little bit in an environment where funding is constantly being cut, this idea that we need to build sustainable relationships for art to integrate into other areas of life, and tackling really big problems and the responsibility of artists these days. I think it's important to strategize and think about how artists can just be integrated better into many scenarios. The background for this project is very much a process of my own artistic practice, the ways in which I've done exactly that, injected myself into scientific practice. Dr. James Bendel at the University of Birmingham. We struck a conversation and he invited me to do some field work. And essentially, I found myself in a new environment, learning so many new things. And between the two of us, we really quickly discovered that it was a beneficial process for everyone involved. Um, as someone who was already a practicing artist working, um, trying to broach topics like climate change, there was so much value to be had to actually be in the sites of research, so that not only was I better informed, but I was also someone now who had a resource at my disposal to ask questions. Um, so really, what this bit is hopefully trying to do is just provide more evidence of the effectiveness of when artists join, scientists and artists join other disciplines, they actually add a lot of value, and it's not something, artists shouldn't be left to disseminate work at the end of a project, for example. They should absolutely be involved in as many different disciplines and research projects as possible. I really do believe that, and I think that's potentially a lifeline for the arts in many ways as culture and arts continue to get cut. We really do have to demonstrate that artists are absolutely critical, exciting, innovative, and add so much value to every domain that they should just be naturally included in more projects and more work. Um, so this, what we've designed is a project that really tries to mimic the processes in which James and I have worked. We were lucky enough to be introduced very early on also to Xiao Ma, who's a professor at Nottingham Trent University, who approached us with an entrepreneurial angle, and he really convinced us, and together we thought of this really wonderful idea of how can we imagine working together as a venture. So not necessarily, artists work separately from a scientist, which is also then separate from any dissemination or a curatorial approach. But how do we build better collectives between the disciplines? So, and this is what it's all about. So EASE is absolutely about, um, you know, there is a challenge here. There's an urgency of the climate crisis. Scientific knowledge often struggles to connect with the public. Um, there's many reasons why that might happen. It's not science's fault, but it's not also not tooled or hasn't been created to deal with the problem of communication. Um, and what a better uh, match really than, artists who really do desire to communicate better, tell stories, build narratives around their work, and also promote their work, which will inherently help uh, any other discipline in the way that it can, of course, help communicate, but become better integrated into other disciplines. So we have fabulous partners, and of course, this approach is tied to a very specific region, but it's meant to be studied and expanded far beyond Crete. So Crete's an island in Greece. It's a really, really fantastic, magical place. Maybe what I'll do is just show some photos here. Of course, it's a tourist destination, but it is really in many ways the center of many civilizations. There's over 12 that have passed through Crete, from the Minoans, to the Romans. There's so many civilizations that have dealt with challenges, and many of those challenges have been centered around climates. And while today maybe 20 years of drought, we would be able to handle that via technology. There are many civilizations in the past that was just absolutely uh, uh, completely detrimental and led to collapse. So in many ways, this kind of metaphorical story of Crete is many societies there have historically been affected by climate change. They have dealt with these problems before, and alongside that, Crete is just absolutely full and rich with history, heritage, and beautiful landscapes. And we couldn't think of a better way to tell, uh, or maybe just frame stories around climate that could actually reach people, make people more interested in learning about how climate is studied, um, which is such an important aspect of dissemination. We really believe that education is the precursor to um, any form of, changing someone's mind about anything. So, um, in terms of, there's lots of social studies that kind of point to this idea that if we can educate creatively, we have a much better chance of getting people interested in the topic, so that it increases the kind of gray area of conversation as opposed to a polarized kind of setting that we often find ourselves when we talk about wicked problems like climate change. People are either, often fully believing or fully denying, and there seems to be absolutely no conversation. And this idea that just getting people interested in how climates are measured, studied, understood, and historically understood can be a really great starting point. Um, I'll just very briefly talk about, so I reference some of my work only because I think it will just give you an example of um, what this place looks like. Oh, this is the wrong one. Let's just go here. It's not necessarily to promote what I've been doing. This is all incredibly experimental work that I've been doing. It has nothing to do necessarily with the project, but Crete is an evocative place. I've been inspired by it because of its landscape, from caves to the sea. The atmosphere is incredibly evocative in so many ways, and the fact that every region in Crete seems so different and unique, we've decided that, 5 workshops in 5 unique places in Crete would be a really great way to talk about the diversity of the place while centering it around that kind of a shared narrative, perhaps, of uh, the region, the communities, the climate challenges that we all know Greece faces. It is one of the most hardest hit areas of climate change. It's already experiencing massive fires that are more intense than other regions, extreme heat, extreme flooding at times. So in many ways, the Mediterranean and Greece is one of the hardest hit in Europe. But it's also really just a precursor to other regions. So it's not as though, these effects will just stay here. It will definitely potentially travel quickly around the rest of the world as well. And in that way, we can learn from a place like Crete. We can tell stories and narratives that center around an area and bring them back home to a more local audience like the UK. And then, of course, export that kind of imagery and artwork and understanding um, around the world, really, as artists do so well. Um, so the caves are really interesting places to work. Part of the programming of the residencies is, of course, always at least once or twice going into the cave environments, but of course, experiencing the archaeology around the history around those cave sites, the local communities that um, have created economies around the heritage around these areas. Um, and what we envision the week-long residencies to be is absolutely a shared space with absolutely no expectation of creating work during the week. It's all about just sharing an experience, learning each other's languages from science to art to the local community, trying to understand the relationships that can be made, and starting, I guess you could say, starting a relationship between a group of practitioners that are um, interested in the same kinds of things, but approach it and develop their thinking in different ways. So every artist, I'd imagine, would have a different way of conducting their work. Every scientist has different specific questions that they're asking. But what is the kind of common link between us all? What do we want to do while we're there? And then think of ways in which we can communicate, educate people about what's happening in the most creative, evocative way, and critically, a very sustainable way of um, of thinking about how can we create something together that is not predefined, is worked on together. It could be an exhibition, it could be a group blog, podcast. It could be a product that travels from council to council. It could be really anything that we can dream up together with this idea of trying to understand, can this be something that can affect people? Can it be an effective way of communicating what's happening? Can it be sustainable in the sense of does it not need a lot of funding or a way to recover the funding or the costs of the product or the prototype or whatever it is? And really, the work of the project is not necessarily, we're hoping that everyone who works on the project gets incredibly inspired and it influences their work in some way and it gives them some sort of um, experience that's unforgettable and influences their work in some way, shape, or form. But the project, which is relatively short for a grant cycle of 2 years, is really meant to develop the relationships, help understand how these relationships can be better, and help dream up ideas that we hope to apply for follow-on funding to execute. So if we do dream up a big idea that really does have a lot of promise, then of course executing those ideas, whether that is a large-scale installation that lives at a museum, that travels around the country and the world, whether that's a podcast that gathers a lot of attention, helps educate people, and we are really sincerely thinking about how do we form collectives between artists and scientists that aren't ego-centered, are absolutely there to share a cause, a common cause, and to be, in the best sense of the word, a kind of a forming of a collective that really wants to do good together and can use each other's strengths to work together better. Okay. Um, we have, of course, the application, which is relatively straightforward. And maybe I can just pass it to Louise quickly to
Yeah.
just talk about
So,
the process or anything that you wanted to say.
yeah, do you want to
Stop share?
stop sharing and then
Yeah.
I'll
Yeah.
take over? So nice to meet everybody. Thank you for joining and all the future watchers. Feel free to ask some questions in the chat as well, and we can go through those. But also we can have a bit of a dialogue towards the end as well. So in the chat, I've put links to all of these, but if anyone wants to find them, go to their Photoworks website, go here, go to opportunities, and then that takes you through directly to the Artist Venturing Labs open call. So thank you, Mark, for sharing kind of so much depth of background information and intentionality around the project, which is really incredible. And it is a really special project, and there's an incredible number of opportunities for artists. There's 25 funded opportunities across the 5 lab weeks, which happen at different times. And there's a whole range of incredible partners. So it's a very rich and diverse set of connections that participants would make as part of this. So we're just to kind of break it down in practical terms, there's the opportunity to propose to come along to one of the 5 weeks, and you add your preference to the dates, and you can choose any of the dates or say all of the dates are possible, and then we will be curating the groups according to the balance of various different things to make a super mix of people. But also becoming part of those groups is also becoming part of the program as a whole. So being visible within the network and also having the continuity of opportunity for conversations. So it's more than those lab weeks, as Mark was saying as well. So hopefully you've had a read through of this description of the project, and as the as Mark was describing, it's a co-design process, but there's already some groundwork in place around when the weeks will happen in Crete, the focus of the location of those weeks, the mix of subject matter as well. But I'll take you to that page in a minute. So we have a selection panel, which is made up of Mark, Michael Pinsky, who's an artist advisor on the project as well, myself, Director of Photoworks, Debbie Keefer, Deputy Director of Photoworks. We're taking submissions through the form, which I'll go through in a minute. But what we're looking for is a PDF which contains the things listed here. So feel free to ask us about any of those details, but reference to previous projects, images, short descriptions, include links. Make sure that any of the links that you provide, either you put the access code or take the password protection off. It just needs to be easy for us to access those things. We haven't got time to be requesting access codes from people, and yeah, the jury need to be able to just get into the link and look at it. So that's the most important thing about where you put your PDF. You can put it on a Google Drive, a Dropbox, or your preferred platform, but it needs to not be password protected. We just need to be able to access that PDF. And maximum 5 pages in the PDF. Please select the lab dates. The deadline is the 29th of June at practically midnight. That's a hard deadline. We're not intending to do extensions, so please stick to it. The artists receive £1,000 stipend for the week on site. Travel, accommodation, and meals and on-the-ground travel costs are covered. There is a possibility for artists to request if they want to stay longer on their own terms and their own means, they could request a later return date for their flight, for example. So that's just for interest, to make the most of being out there. There will be scientific teams, site partners, local hosts. It will be quite structured, but there will be moments to share about your practice as an artist, as well as thinking space time within the structure of the days, but there will be organized trips to places with everyone together. Is there anything else you want to say about the kind of structure of the labs, Mark, in terms of the practical?
Yeah, I mean they're meant to really be there's a morning component usually. Every day will be different, but we're already planning this kind of shared site visit, and then staying in that site to have conversations, discussions, um, and then in the evenings, of course, then hopefully more knowledge sharing and really we're trying to understand what, and part of the process. Oh gosh, my cat is just jumping all over. Part of the process is determining that as the weeks go. So what, the first week might be what we think is the best way to do the project, and then by week 5 we find actually a lot's changed. And it's adaptive in that way because part of it is learning from the participants and learning from everyone um, that's being a part of the project together. Um, I can talk a little bit more about what happens after those dates, but if there was something else you wanted to say, Louise.
Yeah, so I'll just keep going through here and then we can tag team.
Yeah.
So yeah, so there'll be features on the digital platforms. Also, the website that Mark was sharing earlier, there's a link in the chat, but the wider Picturing Climate Change website is an ecosystem, and there's lots of opportunities on there. There's partners sharing about their work. It's also kind of a research aggregator, what the best terms are, but it's incredibly rich, and EASE is a project within that. So do you explore the wider Picturing Climate Change website, because that's also a place where whether you do get through to this opportunity or not, there's still a way to be involved in the whole ecosystem of the project. Importantly, who we're looking for and what we ask that you are is really important. Also, in terms of who we're looking for is quite flexible because we are really keen for it to be multidisciplinary. But the key thing is that the artist needs to be enthusiastic and able to collaborate in the environment that the lab is brewing. So it is obviously bring your work and ideas to the collective, but it needs to be a collaborative process of thinking together and sharing, and whether you create your own work as a result of this afterwards, but the intention of the collaborative practice and sharing is really foregrounded. It's not about coming to do a solo residency in the midst of this context, if that makes sense. Is there anything else you wanted to say about that, Mark, in terms of mindset approach?
Yeah, I think that's exactly what we're hoping for, that kind of collective mentality. And really, again, the not there's no expectation that work is created. Of course, you can create work while you're there, and you know, but that you just won't have enough time. It's not enough time. It's really there to set
Yeah.
the stage for a much longer form of thinking together that will occur over the next year, basically year of your cohort's involvement, I suppose.
Yeah. And it's coming with an open mind and positive energy and being there to make connections. There will be a range of, I suppose, facilitation and advice and support in different ways. And Photoworks will be there from multiple perspectives, but into like curatorially and materials practice wise, as well as the other artist practitioners that are there, and the scientists will also be coming with the similar intentionality, as well as the connections with local communities and the sites and other things. So incredibly rich, but it is very personally engaging, so that's important. You don't need prior experience of these things, but you need to have the willingness and enthusiasm to do so. And if you do have experience of these things previously, also it's nice to share about that as well in your application as reference points. You do need to be UK based. That's the UKRI requirement for all of the 25 places that we're talking about in this instance. And you do need to commit to those weeks because they're very precious opportunities. And obviously, things do happen, but they're not transferable dates. So we just need to check on that. And so within this page, we have all these buttons. So the Apply Now button takes you to the form, your name, email address, are you based? Yes, no. The descriptions of the labs. So in here, you can choose any of these, but to decide about those, if you go to, can't get to that section, the bar is in the way, here we go. You go back to the website and if you go read full details of the open call, within there you can see a lot more detail about the invitation, about the labs. So you can see the dates of the labs, the descriptions of the focus of the labs. They might change in nuance a little bit, but pretty much they're going to stay at those dates unless anything changes, and they're going to have these focus within what you will encounter. So have a think about those in terms of entanglements, materiality, sound and sonic environments, temporal mapping. We will be curating the set of people in relation to those subjects as well. So if you want to connect with any of that subject matter within your application, then you might want to do that. But if you have multiple ideas about dates that you might like to join for, then you can reference the project as a whole, but it's up to you how you want to approach that in your application. And I think it's all clear in here, and here we are on the live Q&A day. There's the frequently asked questions, which is also on the website. So that's one of the buttons which you might have had a look through, and that takes you through to this page. After this event, we might add some more to the picturing climate change. So there's quite a few places where you can look for information, but hopefully that's all fine. We might add to the facts for the open call in here if there's any more questions that we haven't already covered. So do check out that part of the website as well. And yeah, I think it's quite comprehensive in terms of the answers to the questions. So I think that's as much as I can cover now. If there's anything else.
I think the last thing I'll say before we just turn it into a discussion or questions or whatnot is when we proposed this to the UKRI, there was a real sense that you know, a change was necessary in how artists get involved in projects, and we see EU funding councils, we see the UKRI funding fewer and fewer art-related projects, and there was a conscious decision to, you know, treat this much more as an educational opportunity for artists and scientists rather than a fun and like a fully funded opportunity. So, you know, this sense that the opportunity is rather short, but provides access to lots of educational opportunities for artists themselves, I think is a really rich environment to be in. Apart from obviously the stipend and the travel being covered, I mean, in many ways, this is recreating what is quite often the reality today, is that there isn't massive pots of funding out there for artists to work with, but we need to find ways to work better together. And again, this is an attempt to get artists to show the value of artists so that they just get integrated into more things organically rather than wait for open calls constantly. That being said, this is an open call, and I think this is just a chance to be a part of a research project that tries to redefine, you know, what the role of artists are in the UK right now. We're really excited about just having lots of conversations and dialogues about that, you know, amongst each other, curators, scientists. There will be some other academics involved from different perspectives. So I really do think it's going to be just a really rich educational opportunity for everyone involved that hopefully people will find incredible value in just being a part of. So after that initial week, what we anticipate, you'll get tons of support from the CBIT Center for Business and Industry Transformation. It's from the University of Birmingham in the sense of thinking of artistic practice as a venture. Um, we're trying to develop new tools that can fit into universities so that every university more organically and better supports the creative practitioners. So not only supporting, the STEM subjects and thinking about spin-outs for tech and things like that, but how do we get universities to support creative and heritage ventures that are, if not more, incredibly valuable uh, things that I think universities need to promote more. So that's a really big goal for us. So that this idea that you'll also be supported to think of yourself as an artist that is better equipped to just go out and be able to show exactly what value you bring to any situation. And and that's something that I think hopefully is priceless, but is an opportunity to redefine the field a little bit, which is for me the exciting part. And that's about it. That's about all I can say. I think maybe before there's some questions or conversation topics.
Yeah. So would anyone like to turn on their microphone and feel free to speak a question if they would like to?
I'd love to ask a question if I could.
Yeah.
I'd like to know a little bit more about the format for that period after the, that initial week, that lab. What will that kind of look like, and what's sort of the time commitment and the support that's going to be available during that period?
Yeah, so in many ways the lines will be open in terms of if you need to ask questions from any of the scientists or the entrepreneurial team or the community partners. That's something that you'll be able to do whenever you want. We're designing it around a kind of a monthly meetup. It doesn't have to be a long meetup. It could be determined by the group, but this idea of checking in together, because at the end of what we have to do from that first initial experience is together, the expectation is to just together imagine five, and what we call the minimum valuable prototypes. And we're trying to think five five ways that people could work together and create something, and then slowly over the course of 18 months whittle that down to one. And then there is additional funding to kind of support that process. Both that could be material wise, that could be time wise, that could be to create an exhibition. It could be any way the group decides to use it. But the idea is through these kind of monthly check-ins, there's just knowledge sharing, there's ideas being produced together, and then there's really one idea being put forth. And what the Center for Business in Industry Transformation, what DMU, what University of Birmingham, what Oxford will be doing is hopefully helping facilitate those conversations so that what is produced, we can start to just test. We can put the work out there. Of course, we can try to understand what the impact would be to audiences from the idea that's produced. And we are absolutely trying not to steer what those ideas are. So if I'm being cryptic, that's on purpose. Because essentially we really want it to be organic, and we want it to be exciting. And if we had labeled what they are, it would be very, very difficult to say that we're producing something new. So we somehow got away with not saying what we're going to create, which is fantastic in my books. Um, but again, the Picturing Climate site will also be a place where uh, everyone can engage as much as possible in a discussion forum as well, and just share ideas, sketches, concepts, bounce ideas back and forth. But really, the commitment we're imagining is also determined somewhat by the group, but we'd recommend something like a monthly meetup to keep the ideas flowing and keep the conversation and the dialogue going. So not a massive commitment, but maybe a sustained commitment.
Mhm. Yeah. Are there any questions about the application process itself, or anything about the practicalities to consider that anyone's concerned about or just curious about? Hi, Benjamin.
Hi there. Yeah, it is quite a dry one, but I was just intrigued about practicalities of getting equipment into Greece,
Yeah.
and if there are any sort of paperwork sort of things that need to be considered.
We are doing a lot of the paperwork for the site access and the opportunity, like the ability to record and all the sites of, we need permission to record in the caves. We need permissions to record archaeological sites. We're handling that. There aren't that many stipulations in terms of gear that I'm aware of. I've brought drones, I've brought cameras, I've brought things like that to Greece, and there's the safety equipment will be provided for participants in terms of helmet, hard hats for caves and things like that. So it would be much more about anything specific that you were worried about. We would talk to you individually and do our best to support you through that, not leave you on your own. That makes sense.
Cool. Yeah, it's then anticipating the potential for if a carnet was needed or anything like that, from the practitioner sides or anything. But yeah, if there's an opportunity to discuss that, that's great.
Yeah, for sure.
Obviously, we're inviting a very multidisciplinary, open-minded approach to who the practitioners are. So if there's instruments or tools or things that need to travel or could be sourced locally potentially as well to avoid any challenges. But yeah, it's all open-minded at the moment for that.
Could I ask another question, if possible? Just returning to the so I've written so many, but one of them being it's described the opportunity of working both with the people who are on the labs and people doing the field work, but also the opportunity to work with people, residents of Crete. And I just wanted to understand a little bit more about who those people might be and how the opportunity to work together might be, I don't want to necessarily say facilitated, but I just wanted to understand what that relationship was and how
Yeah.
it's sort of fostered, especially because you're only there for a week potentially as well. So just to
Well,
understand.
yeah, that's a really good question because one thing I didn't mention at all were the brilliant partners we have in Greece and Crete. And we have two UNESCO geoparks, and what they represent are the communities themselves. So they are in many ways, the facilitators of these relationships. So as part of the monthly labs, for example, not only will you meet with the core team, meet with the postdoctoral researchers, the core researchers, the Center for Business lecturers, invited in, they can't come to every meeting for every group all the time, but invited will be, the people from the UNESCO sites, any of the artists that participate in the workshops. And what they're doing is selecting local participants from Crete, whether they're artists, artisans, significant community members to some of our workshops as well. So they're local people that will act as facilitators and connectors to the wider community. So, in many ways, it'll be part of the group to also decide, if we do work with a local community, say in a pottery village in Margaritas, then we have ways to help you with those connections. But part of it is also, them not steering what happens, but helping facilitate any kind of networking that can happen. because you're right, it's only a week, but maybe that might inspire um, a project where perhaps there's just artistic exchange between the two groups, and that forms the basis of something that manifests digitally or as an exhibition. I mean, I don't know. It could be great to involve the local community if that's how the group decides to work.
Yeah, and the local community in whatever shape or form that takes will be different per week as well. So it's quite tricky to preempt, isn't it? But obviously the intention is to be very specifically and authentically locally connected. So yeah, that will be a feature. So in the run up to the weeks mark, will there be conversations with the selected artists before we go,
Yeah.
for example, just to talk that through
Yeah.
with everyone?
Yeah, for us, we intend to create at least a little pack to prepare people to have a few readings that hopefully inspire people to learn a little bit more about the area, but also about the disciplines that are being studied, you know, what the science might be, but also the practicalities of meeting prior to just alleviate any concerns. It's a bit of a, you know, coordinating travel can always be stressful. So it's nice to meet people and make sure that everyone's on the same page and arrives safely and things like that. Coordinating the stipends and all, you know, we intend to be as open as possible about all of that kind of communication prior and have a group meet. I know Michael wanted to meet physically, but it will, of course, be determined by where people are from, whether that's actually realistic, because there's not necessarily extra funding to facilitate meetings in the UK, but because we can work digitally, we'll at least at the bare minimum meet a couple times prior to each lab, where you'll meet the postdoctoral research assistants, the core team, things like that. I didn't miss any part of your question, did I?
No,
No.
no, I think,
Okay.
but yes, we will be meeting and there'll be information shared. And I think it's just also relationship building wise for participants to get to know each other before being on the ground in the place. And if there's any kind of brewing of thinking that can happen in advance of being together on site, that's the intention as well. Have you got more questions? Anybody? Ben, did you have more on your Benjamin? Did you have more on your list that you want to go through? Imogen, Suki, also Elizabeth, if you and
Yeah.
Goya as well.
If I could ask another question, please, just about the physical requirements for the week lab, because if you're going down in caves and things like that, you know, how accessible are those places going to be, and do you require people to have, you know, a certain level of fitness or familiarity with working in the outdoors, those kind of things? You know, do you want
Yeah.
cavers, for
Yeah.
example?
So yeah, that's such a good question to ask. For the most part, I wouldn't. I put the the demands as medium low. There are incredibly inaccessible, difficult caves in Crete. We aren't necessarily going to go to those one. We A lot of the caves that James works in are actually quite accessible, but there is obviously going to be a base level of you know, being able to descend down an entrance with a bit of rope. That being said, there are different labs that actually have different physical requirements. So if there was anybody that had a particular issue, we would be able to at least work with you to choose a lab that is a little bit more accessible. A lot of the non-cave days are actually, you know, very much tourist sites to begin with, so they have a lot of accessibility built into them. Really, the caves themselves are the one area that may become problematic. But that being said, um, it's the areas around the caves are incredibly impressive as well. And there are people I've spoken to that are incredibly terrified of going in a cave. And I also like the idea of that in itself, encountering, maybe you don't want to when you get there and there is a fear. And I think there's something really nice about that as a metaphor as well. Diving into the past in the cave environment, it can be terrifying. So I just think being open to the encounter, and if you know is the spirit of the project, and that it's okay if um, perhaps certain elements, we will do our best to accommodate anyone who comes. But if everything isn't accessible to everybody, then I think we will think of any ways that we can engage everyone in some way, shape, or form. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I think it's also
absolutely.
about being clear about where we are going, so that people who have any
Yep.
anxiety about the process or place can be supported through the process, because it is a obviously collective ecology of care for all of us, and we want it to be a positive and, and happy process for all involved.
That's great. Thank you.
Can I ask a question? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
sure.
Do you want
I'm
to
just,
do the hand system, and then we can make sure that we catch everybody after this?
Absolutely.
But yeah, go ahead.
yeah. Just I'm curious about the scientists, because you mentioned the scientists. Would those people like to collaborate?
Yeah.
Would it be the people from the UNESCO parks?
So
Like,
yeah, there are scientists that are connected. They are intending to come with the UNESCO parks. They represent not only climate scientists, but often archaeologists and social scientists. Of course, Dr. James Bendel will be there. He is also really well connected with the Greek scientists there, so he is intending, that we also have that kind of perspective from local scientists. So it will alternate. It won't be the same roster at every lab, but we also hope to have, for example, in the final week, there's potentially a pygmy dig. So there's a local scientist that's working on active research, unearthing um, fossils in a really interesting cave area, and he's definitely going to be there on that week, and that kind of thing. Yes, Ben.
I just wanted to ask about you mentioned earlier about the potential not committing to exactly what the potential outcomes are going to be, and allowing the word organic keeps being used, and it sounds like that's sympathetic to the model that was described. I was just interested in there is a theme associated with each lab, and I just wanted to understand a little bit about how that theme, because the outcomes could be so varied.
Hmm.
Does the theme, what role does it play? Is it a sort of conduit to facilitate people pulling together towards something similar, like a common point? Or I'm just sort of interested
Yeah,
what role the
I
themes have.
I think the way we got away with not saying anything about what we're creating is to at least have some kind of structure around what we want to at least have as the glue that holds people together. To a certain extent, the themes are so open in many ways that they could probably be interpreted by five different groups, five completely different ways. Um, but really, they're just starting points, and I think that's the best way to think about, you know, maybe in the reading pack prior, we prioritize some readings on, let's say, entanglement, just to think about how maybe art science and communities are entangled. But really, what does that mean in terms of the output? Probably it could bear no relation whatsoever to that, or it could be actually really well linked to that theme. But I don't think that will matter as much as having something to just start with. really. So yeah, there's very little firm about what the expectations are around that theme. So maybe sound is the one slightly more unique, but I also think that can be quite interpretable. But it might attract a certain cohort of people who really are engaged with that idea. But the others are quite open, I think. Imogen?
Hey, I was just wondering if there's like any places you'd recommend we go like online to look more at like the locations and stuff, because I've never really heard of most of these places. And like also maybe to get an idea of the research that's going on around them as well.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think the UNESCO site. So there is the Satia and the Silurites UNESCO site. So they're all found on. I'll put the link again on the EASE um, project site within Picturing Climate, at least, and then anyone who just wants to look at who the partners are. Um, those two UNESCO sites actually do talk a lot about the region. Their whole point of a UNESCO site is to celebrate the diversity of a very particular, and this what makes this a region very special. So they're mandated to do is to really disseminate and protect the environment. So they're really good resources to talk about the landscape itself. But apart from that, in many ways, the research that's emanating, and I think that's a really good point and a good question. And I think that question in particular would be a great addition to the fact or the frequently asked questions area of the site. Some resources for people to understand the research better, the earth science research that James is doing, all of his colleagues do collectively, in Crete, why they're doing it, how it connects to archaeology. And I think a really good thing for me to do would put a little section together. So keep your eye out for that in the next week or so. I'll try to pull that together.
Cool, yeah. I think that would be helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Are there any more questions before we wrap up?
I'm personally happy to receive questions. Anything you ask, if it's really useful to others, I hope, if you don't want them shared, that's absolutely fine. Just say that, but I would probably add them to the frequently asked questions, because if you're thinking others might be, that being said, if it's highly specific, then I probably wouldn't post it, but if it could help others, then please reach out, and my email is on that site, and easy enough to find. And Louise is there from any perspective as well, but definitely from the application perspective, they'll have the expertise to answer any questions.
Yeah.
With that,
Yeah, so on the Photoworks application page, you can see there's the info@Photoworks email that comes through to us, and then we share it between us to answer the questions. So if you have any specific challenges with the application or any more wider questions about anything that we're looking for, or how to approach any of the things within your application, let us know. We're here to help, because it is such a special and unique opportunity. We imagine that there's no easy answers to things, so we're open to discussion, the preparation for that. Cool. I think we had a question also from that came through to Photoworks about collectives or duos as well. Mark, do you want to just say anything from your perspective on that?
I think the question was, if people work, as a collective with more than one person, can they apply? Absolutely. And I think, but we are limited in the funding we did get, so we just have to weigh, an application with maybe 3 members. It's incredibly strong. Would take 3 places, on the program. So just that being a consideration, because each place does have its funding, so we can't treat two people as one or three people as one. But a representative could come, of course, in a collective. I've already had that question. Um, oh, and yeah, really the best way to demonstrate that it's essential to work together would, again, if the collective is already very strongly positioned to work within the space of climate, and this is just the perfect opportunity for them to grow their work. There's no reason why two people or three people wouldn't be selected.
Yeah.
All I
We're
can say is
totally-
we're open. We're very open to anything. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely open-minded, and yeah, we imagine that there will be collectives applying. So yeah, open for those proposals. Is there anything about the technical definition of UK based, especially for our international friends who might be based in the UK for different periods of time? Is there anything from the UKRI parameters that is useful to share at this moment?
I think it's mostly just down to the right to, be here as a resident. We were questioned quite heavily in the fact that a lot of the research activity is based in Greece, which we thought, okay, this might be contentious. And the reviewers, really did ask us, how are we going to guarantee impact in the UK, for this project that, is studying a region outside. And of course, climate, for us, it was an obvious answer that climate communication and climate education and climate change is universal, is not just going to benefit Greece. But the other stipulation really was that, if it's a UK project with UK artists at the heart of it. Uh, Climate is a shared problem. We're going to experience it at a region together, but essentially we're going to disseminate it at home. And the base of artists will be, grounded in some way, shape, or another in the UK. So just residency status or the right to vote, I suppose, is well, we have to pay you, so you have to be able to receive money from the UK as well. If that's
Yeah, and have be able to travel to Crete without
yes.
additional bureaucratic processes. So
Yeah.
that's that thing. But if anyone has any questions about that, feel free to reach out to us directly and share your particular circumstances, and we can have a chat about whether it fits within what's possible. The other things that we haven't mentioned, that there will be a conference, there will be workshops
Yeah.
also coming as well. Do you want to share about some of
Well,
those
yeah, I
things
mean,
planned in? Yeah.
this is why I really think it's going to be such a wonderful shared experience. There's just very, very quickly, I was part of a collective called the Garden Ship and State Project, and this was a SSHRC-funded project in Canada, and it was just such an honor to be a part of a rolling program of events and learning and workshops and exhibitions and things like that. So it's what I envision this to be is if we have 25 artists, I can imagine that together we can be a really exciting voice in this space and determining um, what this kind of collective building can be, how we can exhibit together. So apart from obviously sharing time, working together, checking in with each other, two major conferences where we will ask you if you want to present your work, pitch your work alongside other academics that are interested in climate communication. Two workshops where we try to evidence what impact this project is having, where you'll of course be invited to disseminate at places like Oxford, De Montfort University, online internationally through Photoworks. And then we intend to, at the very least, through Picturing Climate platform, develop a series of feature projects, and we really want to feature every artist that is part of the project, their ideas. We intend to have a filmmaker documenting everything, and thinking of creative ways to promote you as artists, not just on the project, but as makers, as individuals, and then as a collective voice together. So for me, hopefully, a really attractive kind of collective building again, that build a community with a voice together and is stronger together.
Yeah. And also this kind of needs building in terms of the communication of it a bit more. It's around some way of sharing about the experience of the week as well, whether it's through blog posts, some entry on the Preaching Climate Change website, an image, a sound response, a video connection, I don't know, some way that is appropriate for the artists and their practice to share about their experience of being within the lab.
Well, absolutely. I think, again, determined a bit by the group and how we want to work together as well. I mean, I don't know what else to say, but I'm so open to working with people as opposed to dictating.
Yeah.
When we built this framework that can support that the whole point of it is seeing what evolves out of it. So really, I the last thing I want to do is dictate an approach to how this project should unfold. Though we do have a responsibility, and that's the point. Artists do have a responsibility to a certain extent, but they have a lot of power too, and I think that's the thing we want to showcase. Yeah, some of my personal opinions are coming out now, maybe, but I do think, yeah, hopefully people are excited about that.
Yeah, and I think that's a perfect place to end. Unless anyone's got extra questions, do email us, and we'll be sharing this video via the Picturing Climate Change website and our social channels. Do you follow the Picturing Climate Change Instagram? It's a baby who's just fledged.
It's very, very tiny. Please join it and share.
It will be growing up shortly.
Yeah.
And do follow Photoworks _UK Instagram and all of our amazing partners, but you can read more about them on the website. And we look forward to seeing your applications.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone. It's great to meet you all.
Thank you so much. That's been great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, bye.
Thank you.